Everyone has a theory about why adults learn languages slower than children. The most popular one is neuroscience. The brain's plasticity decreases with age. The critical period closes. The window shuts. It sounds scientific. It also conveniently removes all responsibility from the doubt. Because if it's the brain's fault, there's nothing to examine, nothing to confront. You just accept the limitation and move on. I've talked on this channel about why the real obstacle isn't the brain, it's the dominant hand. If you're left-handed, just swap hands throughout. The logic is identical. Your mother tongue is your right hand. Fast, precise, automatic, decades of reinforcements. The second language is your left hand, slow, uncertain, error-prone, and as long as the right hand is still attached, still available, the left hand will never develop. Not because you don't try, but because the moment things get difficult, the system switches back without asking permission. That's the mechanism. I've covered it before, but there is a layer underneath the mechanism that I haven't touched yet, and it's the layer that actually explains why adults find this so much harder than children do. It's not the dominant hand itself. It was losing access to the dominant hand means when you are an adult. A child becoming a beginner at something has nothing to lose. They don't have an established identity. They don't have decades of achievement behind them. They don't have a room full of people who know exactly who they are and what they are capable of. They are just a child. Being bad at something new is completely unremarkable. Now, think about what it requires of an adult. You have to enter a state where you are visibly, undeniably, uncomfortably incompetent at something you have decided to pursue seriously. Other people can see it, you can see it, and you are not a child. You are someone. You have built something. You have a self-image that has been earned over decades through work, through expertise, through the accumulation of recognizable identity. And now that identity is being asked to take a hit, not as a metaphor, as a literal daily ongoing experience. Every time you open your mouth and the wrong words come out, every time you pick up the guitar and your hands don't know where to go, every time someone younger, less experienced, less accomplished does something effortlessly that you are currently failing at, this is the tax. And the more you have built elsewhere in your life, the more identity you have accumulated outside this new thing, the higher the tax. Because you have more self-image to lose, more identity to temporarily surrender, more distance between who you currently are and the beginner you are going to have to become. I want to be honest about this from my own position. I've been thinking seriously about ability, about learning, about real competence for years. This channel exists because of those years of thinking. And then I sit down with a guitar and my hands do nothing, not something imperfect. Nothing. The gap between what I understand about ability and what I can currently produce on that instrument is embarrassing in a way that has nothing to do with the guitar. It touches something older, something that has nothing to do with music. It touches the question every adult faces the moment they become a genuine beginner again. Who am I right now? When you are fluent in your mother tongue, you know who you are. When you are competent at your existing skills, you know who you are. When you are adult with history, achievements, a recognizable identity, you know who you are. The moment you become a beginner again, that question opens. And for most adults, that open question is not a philosophical exercise. It is a threat. This is why the failure of adult learning is almost never attributed to its real cause. Saying, my brain is less plastic protects the identity. Saying, I don't have time protects the identity. Saying, I tried and it didn't work protects the identity. None of these are lies, exactly. They all contain something true, but none of them are the whole truth. The whole truth is this: you stopped, or you never really started, because the cost of being bad at something visibly, genuinely, irreducibly bad was more than you were willing to pay, not because you are weak, because you are adult, and there's something real to protect. The tax is not imaginary. It's just that most people find ways to avoid paying it while telling themselves a different story about why. Here is what I've learned about the tax. You can't negotiate down. You can't pay it in installments. You can't skip it by being smart about the process. The only variable is whether you pay it publicly or privately. And private payment almost always means no payment at all, because private is exactly where the dominant hand lives, ready to rescue you the moment it gets uncomfortable. The only people who actually pay it are the ones who have removed their own escape routes first, not because they are braver, because they left themselves no choice. There is one more thing worth saying here. The tax is not a one-time entry fee. It's ongoing. Every real stage of growth requires a version of the same payment, because every real stage of growth requires you to dismantle something that was previously working. The musician who could sight read beautifully has to be willing to sound worse before they can improvise. The manager who was an excellent executor has to be willing to feel useless before they can learn to delegate. The adult learner who was articulate in their mother tongue has to be willing to sound like a child or a baby, a newborn, before the new language takes root. In each case, the old competence is not just irrelevant. It gets in the way, and letting it get in the way without reaching back for it is the payment. So the question I keep sitting with, the one this channel keeps returning to, is not whether the tax is fair. It's whether what you are protecting is worth more than what you are refusing to become. Most people never ask that question directly. They just keep finding reasons not to pay. I'm Marcus. See you next time.